all good. All right, we are live, and I have my friend Sam here. She's going to take these lovely dogs for a walk so that they don't get in the way of some good knowledge drops. And this week we are going over this Bottomline recruiting website. So it's a recruiting agency, and one of my, I don't know if you'd call her a second cousin or what. I have a big family. I'm one of 10, and so we have all of these different relatives, and none of us are exactly sure how we're related to each other, but we love each other all the same. And so Katie Conley is my second cousin, who is the proprietor of this website and of this company. And so she asked me to take a look today to come up with some ideas. And she also mentioned that the company was planning on doing a website redesign. So we will keep that in mind as we go through it. So let's go ahead and start with the first page here. It's a very simple design. I love actually the Chicago skyline icon here. I think that kind of brings it in that this is obviously a Chicago business. And one thing that I noticed right away the first time I went on this website is that it still has this like website developer footer thing, website designed by Chicago's ePage City. And this is kind of a common developer tactic where they put in the footer, it's partially to help them with backlinks and to help them with their own abilities to rank on Google. It's kind of like an easy, low-hanging fruit backlink. But what a lot of developers don't realize is that it could potentially hurt them if, you know, they don't specialize in a certain niche. Then all these websites are, you know, linking back to them from different niches, and then Google can't really understand if your website's actually an authority with regards to that. So let me just check really quick. Okay, it's showing the website. That's good. Just making sure. So having these backlinks in the footer from your web developer can be bad for you and can be bad for them. It can be bad for them because it might be confusing Google in terms of the authority of the website and what niche it takes part in. But it can be bad for you because it just looks kind of sloppy. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, but essentially having that in there shows, you know, first of all, that you worked with an outside agency, which isn't a bad thing, but it's something that should be kind of kept behind the curtains. And so what I'm trying to get at is if you have your website designed by somebody else, I would make sure to request that they don't put this in your footer, or if they do, that you get rid of it right away, just because it takes away from the main purpose of the website, which is to educate your viewers about what it is that you do. So the thing that this does too, at least to my perception, granted I'm a person who does web design, so I'm kind of used to looking for these cues, whereas other people might not be. But to me, it kind of then makes me start to question the nature of the design and the professionalism of that. And one thing that I noticed when looking at this website is that it looks like it might have been a templated design. It might not have been a custom design, which again, isn't a bad thing, but can reflect badly on you when you've left these little breadcrumbs out here for people to find and act on. So one major usability issue that I'm noticing on the front page is the slider here. And I can't remember if we talked about this during the last Facebook Live with Sam's website, but the slider is something that can potentially be a usability issue. The nature of sliders is that they're usually, you know, scrolling through images, which you can see it doing right now. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't look like if I hover over it, maybe it actually does stop it. So sometimes when you hover over an image in the slider, it will stop. So at least then you can try to understand what's on the slide and try to make sense of it. But in this case, there's no directional, there's no arrows, there's no little like boxes under it that you could use to navigate it on your own or stop it if you were to hover over it. So that's a usability issue, just in terms of those two things. The other thing is that it's cycling through things so fast that not only can I not really read it, but it's not, it's distracting me from everything else on the page. So my suggestion would be during the redesign to make this what's known as a hero image, where it's kind of taking up that first like main area that your attention is focused to on the screen, and not to have a slider, to have that hero image be kind of your most important thing that you want to tell people on your homepage, which is your most valuable real estate, to just kind of get straight to the point and get people's attention that way. The other thing about these slides, the actual design of the slides, is that they're just kind of generic. They don't really tell you anything about this company, besides it does mention that they are more focused on like sales type positions. But it really only says that on one slide that I can remember. It'll probably come up next. Sales focus. So there you go. But it doesn't really speak to anything about this firm's successes in the past with different clients. It doesn't speak to their specialties, like what part of sales do they focus on? Is it, recruiting entry-level individuals? Is it, more looking for like manager or director level positions? So something like that would be really good to see on this homepage here. One thing I think they do well in terms of their most important goals is they do have these call to action buttons here, looking to hire and submit a resume. So, one thing you have to be thinking about on your homepage is what's the most important thing I can get this person to do next. And for a recruiting agency, you have this difficulty in terms of having to speak to two completely separate audiences. You have the person who wants to hire, who wants to, work with a recruiting agency to make it happen. But then you also have the person who is looking for a job, and you have to kind of equally give attention to both parties in order for you to be effective and to help each one. So I think that they do a good job in terms of making sure that those two goals are present here. The one thing that I would change is maybe adding some more text to say, these are the types of firms, or these are the types of firms that usually work with us. Give it a little context, kind of flesh out that persona so people know if they're in the right place. Do a little storytelling, and then also these are the people that we are, looking to add to our network. Adding a little bit of detail about the ideal job candidate that you're accepting right now. So again, people know if they're in the right place, or if submitting a resume is ultimately going to be a waste of their time because they're not the candidate that you're looking for. Other things that I would love to see, again, to kind of prove that you're the type of recruiting agency that's worth clicking through and learning more about, would be things like case studies or testimonials. On this homepage, I think that's where they're most effective in terms of converting people. And then in terms of this footer area, it always helps, again, to add context, even if it's just a header that says like how to get in touch. Follow us on social, see what jobs we're, sharing lately, and stay in touch for that. Things like that can help, just sort of like directional clues. Let's go ahead and look at the About Us page next, just so I can give you some more understanding of what's going on this website and how it should all connect together for a better user experience. So when I go to an About page, I kind of expect to learn about the team behind the business, if we're talking about service-based businesses and things like that. So on Bottomline Recruiting's About page, there's really not a lot here for me to work with. I guess there is this Meet Our Team button, but I don't know why, and here's my cousin here, Katie Conley Hawking, so I said her, I think, maiden name before. Or wait, I think Hawking's actually her maiden name. But anyway, family member, second cousin, maybe third cousin, I'm not sure. Either way, she's awesome. She's in Chicago. And I think this information could actually go on the About page because it's so short the way it is right now. And I think it should be fleshed out more to talk a little bit about the customers. Essentially, an About page is about your customer. They come here to learn a little bit more about you and about the company and about what makes you tick. But at the end of the day, you're really trying to speak to your customer on that About page, and you need to talk a little bit more about, who would be a good fit working with this company, and also who are the people behind the company. So my suggestion would be to combine those pages. And then this business directory seems like probably a good idea. It's probably, I don't know if it's necessarily in the right area navigation wise. Maybe this should be its own menu item. It doesn't really seem like it's an about us type thing. But I think in order for it to be effective, there need to be some links. There needs to be some context here. I think the idea is, these are maybe clients that the business has worked with before, or, some relation to recruiting, or to just the fact that this is a women-owned business. And so, we want to support the community, and that's great. But in order for it to be effective, there needs to be some more context here. So let's just look at a couple other pages here. So we have 4 employers, and luckily, they get straight to the point, looking to hire sales professionals. Again, I think this page just needs a little bit more context. I'd love to see some, case studies, testimonials, where people can say, this is what the process was like. And that's another thing too. They have a link here for the client process. But I think this is something that could also be really useful on the homepage if it was visualized with more imagery, and kind of like quick hits. Like, this is what you could expect if you work with us. This is, the time frame. This is, the different steps that we have to go through. If you could just speak a little bit more to that, that might help to instill that trust early on, and to also set expectations. I think these things are important when you're considering working with somebody new. You want to understand what the process would be like. So let's see here. I like this FAQ page. I think that this is a step in the right direction in terms of just talking about what it's like to get started. But I would say this shouldn't live on the FAQ page. This should be more for that first page that I looked at here, because this is where people are having those questions. And then even embedding a contact form on the bottom of that page would probably be more effective. Really, the less clicks that you make somebody take to get to that final conversion factor, the contact form or making a purchase or whatever, the better, because, people have a limited attention span, and you just have to make sure that you're keeping that in mind. So, this is the candidates page here, and again, they get to the point at the top, but I'd like to see a little bit more copy again about sort of talking about the experience, framing up expectations for how it usually works. And one thing I noticed when going through this website before, I think it was under the employer side, is that Bottomline Recruiting is really good at going after passive candidates. These are people who are not necessarily applying for jobs, but might be the best fit. And I think that's something that a recruiting agency brings to the table that businesses don't necessarily know how to do on their own, or they're not as effective at converting interest into actual job applications by these passive candidates. So I'd love to see a little bit more about that. I think that probably, and they do have testimonials here, but as I was saying before about using the testimonials a little bit better, I would like to see these not on their own page, but interspersed on other pages as well. Now I've lost my train of thought. Okay, so I think that when you click on the candidates page, if you really want to be speaking to those passive candidates, instead of saying looking for a new sales career, maybe the focus should be more on something like, maybe you're not happy in your current job and you want to explore other options. We're discreet and we have great connections. Talking a little bit more about that, if this usual target for you is these passive candidates, you might even break it out into having 2 different sections here. One of them for people who are actively looking for a job, and one of them for people who just want to kind of stay in the loop to see what's out there. Maybe they're not ready to do anything yet, but as any good sales recruiter knows, building up your network can pay dividends in the long run. It's not always a short-term game. So let's just look at a couple other pages here, and then we'll tie this up. And if you have any questions, leave them under this video. I'll be checking back throughout the week. And again, if you want me to audit your website, I'm happy to do that and add you to the queue of people who, have already signed up, but just make sure to leave your link, and, we can talk a little bit more about when you'll be scheduled. But coming back to this for a moment, so here's the current openings page. One thing I don't see here is an option to, I'm sure when you click on here, it'll ask for, okay, so we have like an apply now button, but maybe even before that, people should have the option to get their resume in the system in case these aren't a good fit for them. Again, it seems like kind of a low-hanging fruit opportunity to take advantage of the long-term nature of recruiting success. So maybe it's just like a little blurb up here that says, we add new positions all the time, something about either, sending in your resume or signing up for email updates or something like that. The other thing I'd like to see here is some of these positions offer, Chicago or offices in Chicago. They talk about where the position is, and my assumption is that they would all be in Chicago, but I think that this needs to do a better job of saying location here, or saying at the top all of these are in Chicago, because these positions aren't going to be relevant for a person who is not willing to move if it's going to be, in another place. And that's, I would think, just common courtesy when it comes to applying for a job to know right away where it is. And it might even say it in here, like this one, for example, says Chicago, but it needs to be called out in a more obvious way, the locations, both on that page and on the individual job pages. So we have also this contact form here, and I think the one thing it's missing is a subject line, maybe like a drop-down menu that says, like, I'm interested in working with you and hiring your recruiting services, and another drop-down option that says I'm interested in, being a candidate in consideration for these positions. So I think, in general, this website just needs to offer a little bit more information respective to these two important parties that it's trying to recruit, essentially, both, business for them and then potential candidates for others. It might need to do a little bit more of a better job of, signing up people to be kept in the loop. So having either like a newsletter or a regular list of jobs that are available could help this company to be more effective without a whole lot of extra work. And yes, I think a design overflow is needed, just because the design here is a little bit dated and it doesn't support the most important goals. So just a little bit more focus on the content and answering people's questions, setting expectations, and also helping people to understand if this website is relevant to them right away would make a huge difference. So that's what I've got for today, and join me next week at the same time, and we will be going over another one.